Abandon perfectionism. Finished, not perfect. Remember when you started drawing and you would become happy when something turned out well? You were proud of it. You would see the good points in your art. But the better you got, the more you would concentrate on the mistakes and ignore the good points. If it's not perfect, it's not worth it, right? Forget it. Perfection is an illusion. If you search for perfection, you will never be satisfied. Chasing perfection will unnecessarily slow you down and prevent you from achieving your goals and give you an art block. Do you know that Leonardo da Vinci had completed a relatively small number of paintings in his considerably long life? He lived 67 years, but only 25 paintings have survived. He was a perfectionist, and because of that he had a terrible business record. When he was commissioned to paint, more often than not, he would not deliver the painting. Mona Lisa, his most famous painting, was also a commission. Instead of finishing it and passing it on to the client, he would keep the paintings and continue working on them until the end of his life. Either that or his commissions would be abandoned for one reason or the other. It went so far that his exasperated father, who was a lawyer, got involved and tried to set up a contract in a way that his son would finish his commission, but he did not succeed. On the other hand, his private notebooks, where he kept his studies and drawings, encompassed 30,000 pages. And at the end of his life he was so fed up with painting that he couldn't stand the sight of a brush. But fortunately for him, his patron at that time, Francis I, who was the King of France, was so very fond of him that he would let him pursue any interest that he wanted, of which he had many, and supported him financially. So what does it have to do with manga? A lot, actually. There isn't really a place for perfection when creating a manga. You need good enough drawings that can bring the story across. Instead of trying to create a masterpiece out of every page, settle for a quality that you can hold on for 160 or 200 pages of a manga volume, or 20 or 50 pages of a short story. So instead of creating 25 perfect paintings, create 30,000 manga pages that are okay. If you try for perfection on one page, you will have to do it for all pages, or there will be a drop in quality. Readers will accept a good enough style that is consistent, but will be put off by a quality drop. So give yourself a break and aim for good enough instead of perfect. Chances are the reason you get an art block is because you are afraid of not meeting the standard of perfection that you imposed on yourself. Avoid feeling overwhelmed by starting out small. Chances are, when you first started thinking about making a manga, you were inspired by one of those long-running Japanese manga with dozens of volumes, and you aim for doing the same. I get the appeal. When you have a lot of space to tell your story, you have a lot of space for character development. But attempting to do such a project in the beginning will likely result in it being dropped. It takes quite a long time to draw, even a short project. It takes time to gain experience and to develop a drawing speed that will allow you to produce a project more quickly. And when you are still in the process of developing your style, your writing and drawing skills and your workflow, doing a long project is not a good idea. You will get overwhelmed easily, get tangled up in plot lines, and it is likely that you will want to redraw the pages that you already did, because you have grown and developed so much by page 100. Let's face it, the mangaka who published long projects did not do that as their first project. Before that, they did short projects in form of doujinshi and one-shots. It's likely that the project that inspired you was their 5th or 10th project, or even later. So you can also do it like that. Start out small. do projects of about 20 pages and then move up to 40 to 50 pages and from there to 160 or 200 pages. A short project of 20 pages is quite doable, even as your first project, and you won't feel as overwhelmed as you would with a long project. You will learn a lot from that project, and the fact that you have completed it will motivate you when you will be working on longer projects, because the feeling of having completed a manga is absolutely exhilarating. Break big tasks into small, doable milestones and follow them step by step. Creating a manga is simple, not saying that it is easy, but deep down it is a rather straightforward process. You write a story, you draw the character and background designs, you make the thumbnails of the pages, you draw the pages in pencil, then ink it, then use screen tones and then add lettering. After that you either upload it to the internet, send it to the publisher, or send it to the printing company for self-publishing. It's a series of milestones that can be followed step by step. When you feel overwhelmed with a task, break it down. I know the feeling of being overwhelmed when creating a manga. The idea for a manga might sound good in your head, but how to get it out of your head and on paper? You know where you are and you almost can envision the finished product, but just what steps to take to get there? A manga project can be broken down into the following steps, like preparation. There's the project information. For example, what is the genre of your manga? How long is it going to be? What audience are you targeting? Where do you want to publish it and in what form? Like print or online or both? What medium will you use? Like traditional or digital or both? Or what production specifics in terms of page size, resolution, delivery format will be there? Or which publishers will you approach? And which research you have to do? And in which languages you want to publish. Stuff like that. And after you're done with that, there's the planning. After you have figured out the project information, and before you have started writing, it is important to figure out the timeline of your story and the social map of your characters. Then comes the writing. You develop the character biographies, write the story summary, then the story outline, and then the script. What is the difference between the summary, the outline, and the script? Well, the story summary basically tells what the story is about. It should not be longer than 1 page. The outline is more detailed description of the scenes in your story, but without the dialogue. And the script is a detailed page-by-page descriptions with panel-for-panel description, and which also includes the dialogue. The script is a detailed page-by-page and panel-by-panel description of what happens in your manga, including the dialogue. And after you're done with that, then there's the design. Like here is where you give the visuals for your story. It's where you create the character sheets with your characters depicted from the front, the side, the back, where you create expression sheets for these characters as well as the fashion sheets of the clothing that they are going to wear. And if there are certain accessoires like armor or weapons, it is also when you create those. You can also include color charts for future illustrations for each character. It is also here where you design locations and collect references for the things that you are going to need. If you want to have a better preparation, you can also do storyboards for your manga and create drawings of important scenes that will be used later on. You can even create 3D models of your characters and backgrounds by using programs like Blender, Vroid, or SketchUp. You can even start designing merch. And that is the preparation. I know, it's a lot. Then comes the manga. It's the part where you actually begin with your manga. I know oftentimes you just want to jump into this and start directly with drawing of manga pages, but I really would recommend to do the preparation first. That way you don't have to abandon your project midway because you got lost. The creation of manga pages can be broken down into the following steps. Page thumbnails with panels and speech bubbles that fit the description and dialogue in your script. Then come the clean pencil drawings of your pages, and then the effects and sound words, and then comes the inking of your pages, erasing and cleanup of the ink mistakes, then screen tones if applicable, coloring if applicable, and lettering. And after you're done with that, which will take a lot of time, you can do the business package. Because even after your pages are done, that does not mean that you will have all you need for your project. When you want to publish your project, there are a few other things that you will need. For example, the logo of your title, the cover for your project, the illustrations of your characters, cutouts of your characters that can be used for merch and promotional materials. Then the promotional materials themselves, like banners, flyers, social media posts. It is also good to have a merchandise concept. What type of merchandise do you want to produce? Where can you produce it and how can you market it to your readers? And when you're done with that, then comes the publishing. There are different steps that might be necessary for that, depending on which route you will take. Here to name a few. For example, researching the publishers and websites where you can upload. If you go the publishing route, you have to create a pitch deck for publishers. Then you have to contact them and to follow up with them. If you go the online publishing way, you have to upload your work to websites that you chose. Or if you want to self-publish, you have to research and use crowdfunding sites. You have also to create a pitch deck for crowdfunding and set up the crowdfunding campaign. These are all the milestones that you have to do when you want to publish a manga. But there are other tricks that you can use. For example, utilizing project management techniques by planning ahead and tracking your progress. For more information, you can check out my class on project management, but I will add a file that sums up all the milestones. You will find it in the attachments. Find your own motivational sources, like motivation map, message to yourself, bribing. Bribing works really well with tasks where there's a simple set of rules and a clear goal, where the task is more mechanical. So this type of motivation can be applied at certain stages of the project, where you have to function instead of think. Rewards narrow of focus, but they also help concentrate the mind on a goal. It's an extrinsic type of motivation, but having a reward helps perform a repeated function for many hours at a time. For instance, during such stages of projects, I would figure out what I wanted, be it a book, a certain gadget or clothes, and I would not allow myself to buy it until the tasks have been completed. You can also create motivational maps. Dream big. What dreams do you want to achieve? Write it down on a big sheet of paper and place it where you can see it. And if you feel your motivation slipping away, look at that poster. You can also create a sort of talisman or a message to yourself. For instance, when Dan Brown, the creator of Da Vinci Code, was working on one of his books, he created a fake dust jacket of the book and put it on another book. He would keep it close to him while he worked, trying to take the pressure away from his mind, thinking that the book was actually done. He had only to write it down. He also created a copy of the New York Times bestseller list and put his book on the first place. I know it's silly, but for him it worked. Maybe it will work for you as well. Find your own routine. Only you know how you can work best. Sometimes you have to try things out in order to figure out how you can work best. For instance, some people like producing manga page by page. Others work best when they utilize an assembly line type of routine. In my case, I best use the assembly line routine. For instance, I will not do any inking until I have drawn all the pages from a chapter in pencil. This has also the advantage that should I want to make a last-minute change, I won't have to redo full pages. But especially with inking, I tend to separate the tasks in order to work faster. For instance, I will ink only faces for a whole chapter, then only hair, then only the bodies, then the backgrounds, and then the effects. That way I can concentrate better on the task, and I also tend to work faster compared to going through all the steps for one page repeatedly. Sleep, exercise, listen to your body. I cannot stress this enough, how important it is. Almost everybody that I know who has been doing manga for a long time has developed some kind of health issue because of that. Muscle cramps and chronic back pains are common. I was in my mid-20s when suddenly I had issues straightening my back after spending hours drawing. What helped me was to start training my muscles and not to work without sleep for 30 to 50 or more hours. If you want to be able to draw manga for years, then you have to take care of your body. Allow to enjoy yourself. Turn play into research. When you are working on a project, don't forbid yourself having fun. Sometimes doing fun activities can be the key to solving plot holes and getting inspiration and motivation. You can turn play into research. Whether it is manga or anime or movies or games, it deals with characters, stories, plots, designs, cliffhangers, and other things that can inspire and motivate you. So allow yourself to occasionally have fun doing other things and use them as research for your own project. It can also be other things than media. For example, if your project deals with something that has to do with your town, go outside and make photos. Research the history of the town. Look for funny anecdotes about the town. Talk to tour guides. Get information from the tourism office. Maybe take a guided tour. Or if you're interested in a story about skiing or diving or other activities, you could try to do these things yourself, if possible, of course. Or you can watch documentaries or read biographies of people who are professionals in that field. There are many things that you can do that don't directly have to do with the creation of manga, but still can benefit you in making your manga. Here are some techniques that I utilize, like using a stopwatch, using checklists, counting back. I often use these techniques when faced with a deadline, but they also work for me during normal times. Here are some of them. Stopwatch or timer. When you don't have much time but still have a lot of work to do, it is good to figure out just how much time you actually have. For that, you divide the amount of hours that you have until the deadline by the amount of pages that you still have to do. Maybe subtract a few hours so that you have a bit of a time buffer at the end. Then you use a stopwatch while working on that page. If you are faster than the stopwatch, you can rest the remaining amount of time or do something fun. If you are slower than the stopwatch and the time runs out, it cuts into the time of the next page. When there is no time limit, you can leisurely work on your project. But faced with a deadline, you can work more quickly. This stopwatch technique forces you to concentrate on the most important aspects and not to waste time on less important things. And it's not like the readers can tell the difference when seeing the finished results. However, this is not a technique that I will use long term, as it would be too stressful. Use it in short bursts, when it is absolutely necessary. Checklist. I often use checklists when working on projects. That way, I don't have to remember all the steps that I need to complete, but I just can consult the checklist. It is also very satisfying to check tasks off the list after completing them. I even do checklists for daily tasks because writing something down and having it on the list makes it more likely that I will actually do the thing on the list. Counting back. This is a technique similar to a stopwatch in the checklist. Basically, in it I make a tally of the things that I have to do. Let's say the manga chapter I'm working on has 112 panels. So I take a piece of paper and write 112 on it. With every panel that I draw, I count backwards. If the number of the whole chapter is too intimidating, as it can be, I can also use the number of pages that I have decided to work on that day. I usually work with double pages. Let's say it's 2 double pages, so it's 4 pages, and there are 24 panels. Then I take a piece of paper and put 24 on it. I can also add a bit of time pressure by using a timer and giving myself 30 minutes to draw it. So all in all, it would take 12 hours to draw all the panels under these circumstances, of course not counting the breaks. However, you don't have to go overboard and overwork yourself. See what fits you, your schedule and lifestyle best. Maybe you will develop your own techniques that will work for you. Forgive yourself. There's no point in giving yourself a hard time, and it's not like it will make yourself more productive or have better results. You can drive yourself into the ground for your yesterday, or you can raise yourself up to meet your tomorrow. It's your choice. Imposter syndrome. I think that it is important to address this issue since so many people suffer from this, and creatives in particular. The imposter syndrome means doubting your own skill and accomplishments even when there's no reason to. I think in artists it has to do with that damn perfectionism. Just no matter how good the picture is in your head, you can't get it to look exactly like that on paper, which is why we are rarely satisfied with what we create, and it drains our motivation. Even being consciously aware of it and actively fighting against it, it still creeps up on you. I think that creating a manga can increase the feeling of imposter syndrome even more because so many disciplines are involved and there are so many areas where you can't be perfect and you give yourself hell for it, even when you really don't need to. There's also a thing that a lot of manga artists experience, which can be described as mental drain or mental fatigue, which means the longer you spend with a project, the less you can judge how good it actually is. The more tired you are, the more sleep deprived you are, the less good of a judge you are to your own creations. It is easier with illustrations, but when you are creating a manga, you not only have to think about how the reader reads it, how you set up the atmosphere, how you portray the feelings, what composition you choose, what your characters say, what nonverbal cues and hints you give to the reader. There are so many things. I know a lot of artists who are trying to create a manga but end up not progressing because they are constantly reworking it. By page 30 they don't like the beginning, so they scrap everything and redraw it, only to have the same experience again. Thus, this vicious cycle continues, and nothing gets finished. Throwback to a while ago. After I finished doing the paneling for a short story of 42 pages, I was so mentally exhausted that I questioned the whole thing. Does the story make sense? Do the characters behave consistently? Is it even interesting? Like, what am I even doing? Like, what the... I then realized what was going on. It's the imposter syndrome. I then looked outside. It was already 2 a.m. in the morning, and I saw the stars. I spent half an hour lying on the bench near my house, staring at the stars and decompressing. I also saw a few shooting stars. After that, I went straight to bed. I did have a few weird dreams, but when I woke up refreshed and with a different perspective. I think because of the imposter syndrome and the mental drain that a manga artist can experience during a project, it is good to have all your planning done before you start working on your manga pages. Do the planning while your head is still fresh, so that you can later just concentrate on the purely mechanical execution. It certainly helped me. When you're exhausted, you just have to trust your judgment from the time that you are still sane enough to plan ahead. Give your tired self a blueprint that it can follow. And be kind to yourself. Take breaks, stretch regularly, sleep, find your own way of decompressing, and trust yourself that you knew what you were doing when you started the whole adventure. And remember that perfection is like the horizon. No matter how much you walk towards it, you will never reach it. And good enough is good enough.